Eric, we haven't met, and I hate this to be our first communication. My husband has passed. I did not expect this, but he said if it ever happens to reach out to you immediately. That was an email that I received not that long ago, and as an advisor, it's one that happens more frequently than I had ever hoped to see. But with that, it has helped me to be a stronger advisor to make sure that I'm advising the right way and talking about something that today may not be as fun and lighthearted to talk about, but it's something that truly needs to be discussed and oftentimes gets avoided. And that is the unfortunate circumstance of an untimely passing of a spouse. So we're going to dive into this. We're going to talk through some things. The first thing I really want to talk through is steps to consider and make sure that you are prepared. The second thing is what a plan could look like for you. With that, we're going to have a little fun. I don't know if you've caught the episodes of Landman on TV, but there's a Cammi Miller and there's a Monty Miller. And in that series, Monty passes away unexpectedly and leaves Cammi a complete mess. And with that, we're going to name those people there in the plan just to show you. And then we're going to talk through what to do if the unexpected does happen. So the first thing that we want to look at here is know your entire financial picture. Now, that will be a financial plan. That will be all of these different things that come into play, but it's having the conversations. If you're married, you need to really be in tune with each other's finances and know what's going on. Hopefully that's the case, but we have seen plenty of circumstances where people are living totally separate lives when it comes to finances. And with that, then when somebody passes away, they don't even know what to expect. We don't want that for you. We want to make sure that you're having those conversations. The second is making sure that you've got your beneficiaries all listed out properly. Now, again, that goes back to communication and making sure that, hey, am I your beneficiary on these accounts? Making sure you see that, because the beneficiary is going to trump the trust and the will, whatever that says on the account. So if you have a retirement account, you have the ability to list out a beneficiary. That's how that's going to play. Now, this also comes into consideration when you have individual brokerage accounts. They have TOD, transfer on death. Or if you have a joint account, you title that joint tenants by the entirety. That allows you the ability to basically own that account with your spouse, or you have joint rights of survivorship. So it's an interesting one there because joint tenants of the entirety we often see with properties. If you look at creating a joint tenants by the entirety and an investment account, most financial institutions, Fidelity, Vanguard, all these different ones don't have that option, but they do have joint rights of survivorship, which at least allows you to also, again, be connected so that if something were to happen to one spouse, the other one takes over that account. And then you've got to think through having an estate plan and a will. Go talk to an attorney. It may not be that you need a trust in place. It may just be that you need a will. It depends on how complex things are and what you're looking to do and what your goals are. But finding somebody who truly specializes in that, don't go to the one size fits all, because when they do that, they may or may not know everything. I prefer to find somebody who's board certified that can really focus on making sure that they're taking care of things for you. And from there, you've got to think through tax planning. What does this look like if something were to happen? I say this because we oftentimes see when it does happen, you're going to go into what's called a widow tax bracket initially. You're going to have the widow be a widow, and then you're going to go into the single filer tax bracket that following year. And when that happens, that means that your tax bracket is going to be less favorable for you. The most favorable tax brackets are set into place when it comes to a married filing jointly person. So that's something that you've got to look at, because when it comes to withdrawals, you're going to have required minimum distributions that start at a certain age. Well, if your tax brackets are much less favorable, you may end up paying more tax, or maybe you just have higher expenses in retirement altogether. Well, you'll end up paying more in tax. Roth conversions, things like that can be a part of the plan to help you to avoid those if that's the case. Then you have the idea of delaying Social Security. There are a lot of people that are talking right this second about taking Social Security at age 62. That does not mean that that is the best thing to do. Everybody's plan is different, but it depends also on who you are and what you are planning for. If you are planning to take care of your spouse long-term, one of the best things you do is, if you're a high-income earner, is to potentially delay Social Security. The idea of this allows you to be able to take a higher payout so that if you were to pass early on, your spouse would have a guarantee from the federal government paying that Social Security the rest of their life at a higher percentage versus having to just depend on investments themselves and the ups and downs of the stock market. When somebody passes, we're seeing things with healthcare also that have to be considered. You're immediately going to have a change in healthcare. If you're 65, you're going to be able to stay on Medicare, but let's say that the spouse was still working. If they were still working and you're under 65, you'll have the ability to take COBRA, 18 months that you can take the COBRA there, but it is an expensive thing. Then you have affordable care, which, as I've always talked about, is not always affordable. It could be the unaffordable care, depending on how much you're pulling out and how high your income is. Other options that you could consider are out there, such as MediShare and things that we've seen clients do, though that's something that you want to think through as well, especially if you have pre-existing conditions, because that does play a factor in this. Once you've got all of these things figured out, you've really got to make sure you stay organized. You've got to list out exactly what's going on, where everything is. And part of that plan is making sure you have a financial emergency contact. That should be the attorney as well as the advisor, knowing that you can reach out to them immediately to help you make those decisions, because you're going to be under a lot of stress. And with that stress, that could lead to poor financial decision making. So you've got to make sure that you've got the right people in your corner to help you to make those immediate decisions that you're having to make, and making sure that you're not making the wrong ones during those times. Then you've got to think through what the long term looks like. Now, that may not be the immediate thing, but that may be something that you can plan for again right this second. And that is, hey, if something were to happen to the spouse, where do you go? Do you downsize? Do you relocate? Do you move closer to the kids, or are the kids going to move in with the kids? What does this look like from the rest of your life? Because the long-term plan is something that's very important, because at some point you're going to get to an age where potentially you can't take care of yourself. And if you're by yourself at that point and it's only you, or maybe you're just there and you're lonely, maybe there's the idea of moving into an assisted living facility or something else to make sure that you are fully taken care of to live out the rest of your life. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the actual financial plan. As I'd mentioned, we've got Cammi and Monty in here, both age 61. Quite a bit of an expense. They have $9,000 in monthly expenses. That's not including some debts that they have that we'll get to in a minute. Monty's putting in 6% to his 401k, and he gets a 6% match. Monty's making a lot of money. He makes $300,000 a year. Now, Monty, if you've seen Landman, is working in the oil industry. He's actually the owner of the company. But in this scenario here, he's making $300,000 a year. Cammi is going to be getting Monty's Social Security, or half of that, 50% of that. And then Monty's going to get a really high payout here, $2,700 starting at age 62, or if he delays, it will be even higher than that. Monty has a pension. Now, with this pension, I want you to really look at this, though, because what we're seeing is Monty's going to get $50,000 starting at age 62. The issue here is if Monty passes away, Cammi only gets 50% of this pension. That is something that you really want to make sure you're planning for and asking the right questions to know, is this money always going to be here? Or if something happens to this person, does the money that I get decrease? Social Security is going to change. Pensions will change. So those are things that you want to make sure that you're focused on. From there, the plan is Cammi to already be retired. She's been a homemaker there, and Monty is going to retire at age 70. Retirement expense, that same $9,000. They'll have some healthcare expenses in retirement. They've done well for themselves. They've got $1.57 million total net worth, $70,000 in the bank, $1.3 million in a pre-tax 401k. But they have a loan here of $600,000, and the $600,000 loan, they've got $500,000 they're going to owe on their house. And that's going to be an additional expense for them, $2,398 a month. So we're pushing up there, over $11,000 in monthly expenses. And then Cammi's got a fancy car. Again, it goes back to the flashy things with the oil show, but $2,000 a month. So now we're talking $13,000 in monthly expenses right this second, looking at what they've got. He's making $13,000, or he's making $300,000. He can afford it right this minute. But where does that go if something happened to Monty? The current value of the home, $800,000. Again, they have more property tax and insurance, pushing this up to nearly $14,000 in total monthly expenses. And so what this looks like is if Monty were to continue to live, well, there's a 96% probability of them having $3.788 million. A lot of money here for this. But if Monty were to pass at age 62, this drops to a 47% probability of success, and the idea of Cammi having nothing remaining at the end of the plan. And that's why it's so important for you to really walk through things to make sure that you have the proper plan in place so that you're not hung out to dry and trying to figure out what to do. Now, watching this, you're probably saying, well, if something were to happen, what would I do? And that's what we want to talk through finally. And looking at this, we mentioned before reaching out to the financial emergency contact. At this point, if something were to happen, that's the first step you really want to do, is make sure you've got that. You should be organized, like we had talked about, have the plan in place, know where all the documents are, making sure that you can access everything immediately. From there, you want to reach out to all of your financial institutions, making them aware, locking everything down, letting them know that, hey, my spouse has passed, and I'm looking to start to try to access these accounts. Ask the question, how do I get access to these accounts to be able to take over those accounts? They're going to oftentimes tell you what we've seen here and what we've done with clients, and that is you're going to need a death certificate. So when you go to get a death certificate, make sure that you get multiple death certificates, because most companies, financial institutions, and other businesses are going to require a copy, a legitimate signed copy here or a legitimate piece of paper, not just a copy. So make sure you get the physical death certificate there. From there, you want to make sure that you've got the liquidity ready to go. If you don't have the liquidity ready to go, you've got to go into overdrive to figure out where you're going to get quick cash just to make ends meet for the short term. Now, I don't want you to make quick financial decisions though, but you do have to have the money just to make sure that you're able to cover the bills. With the financial decisions, again, it goes back to that emotional stress. You can quickly make rash decisions that don't make sense for the long term, because you're just really having a lot of anxiety and just concern here, and you just do something such as take all the money out and pay everything off immediately. But then it's like, well, now what? And that may not be the situation that you should put yourself in. So making sure that you don't make any big financial decision immediately. From there, you want to make sure that you give yourself grace. It's not going to be easy. We've seen this. We've walked through this with clients, and you're going to beat up on yourself. You're going to say, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I know this? I wish I would have asked this. Why live in the why? You can't. You got to move forward. We've got to make sure that you give yourself grace and understand that, hey, this is not going to be an easy time. And I'm sorry if this is something that just happens to hit at the right time for you. And I wish it wasn't that if you're watching this right this second. But again, it is the inevitable. It will come. So we have to make sure that we're planning for that. There's probably other things that you can think of that you could help somebody with, because maybe you've been through this situation. List that down in the comments. It would be super helpful.